The bunny family lived in a cozy den at the edge of Animal Town. If you haven't heard of Animal Town, that's because it only exists in the land of imagination. But it's a wonderful place, and I'm going to tell you all about it. Animal Town is a pretty spot with a river along one side and a big green meadow on the other side. It's full of quiet streets lined with trees and houses. But not houses like the ones you're used to. Oh no, these are special kinds of houses, for these are animal homes. In fact, when I said the streets were lined with trees and houses, I could just as well have simply said that the streets were lined with houses. That's because the trees in Animal Town are also houses. They're homes for squirrels and birds and other sorts of tree-dwelling animals. The bunny family didn't live in a tree though. They lived under a tree. Their home was a den, which means it was dug out underground. The bunny family's cozy den was dug underneath a big, branching tree. It was a perfect home for a family of bunnies. There was plenty of space for little rooms under the wide tree. And that was a good thing, for there were a great many bunnies in the bunny family. There were 3 sisters and 3 brothers who loved to hop and play and chase their own little cotton tails. 3 sisters and 3 brothers made 6 children in all. And then there were nearly as many grown-up bunnies in the family too, for there were 2 parents and 2 grandparent bunnies. This made 4 grown-up bunnies. 6 little bunnies and 4 grown-up bunnies made 10 bunnies altogether in the bunny family. And they all lived in the cozy den beneath the big branching tree at the edge of Animal Town. And so it was that there were 10 places set at the bunny family's dinner table one evening, ready for the 10 bunnies to eat together. The weather was just starting to grow cooler that evening, and the leaves had just begun to fall from the big, branching tree. It was still warm enough that the bunny children had played outside all afternoon, mind you. They'd run and hopped around under the big tree, laughing and playing with the squirrel children who lived next door. But when the sun sank down behind the hills, the evening air felt cold, and the little bunnies began to shiver just a bit. A chill breeze swept through the meadow and down the streets of Animal Town. The breeze stirred up the fallen leaves that lay in small heaps below the tree. The leaves swirled, making a soft rustling noise. That was when the bunny parents and the squirrel parents called their little bunnies and squirrels inside for dinner. So the 3 sister bunnies and the three brother bunnies said good night to their squirrel friends, and they hopped into their cozy den underneath the big branching tree. It was warm inside the den, and it felt just as snug as could be after the cool air outside. The bunny's den was a neat little home. It was warm and bright, with many pretty lamps that made a cozy light. When you first went into the den, you entered a big main room that was round like a circle. On the floor, there was a round rug made of colourful rags tied together. There was a group of cosy chairs at one side of the big room, and on the other side was a long wooden table. This long table was where the bunny family ate their dinner. There were benches along two sides of the table, and this is where the bunny children sat. At the ends of the table were 4 chairs, where the parent bunnies and grandparent bunnies sat. That night, when the 6 little bunnies hopped into the den, the tips of their noses and the tips of their long floppy ears were cold from the evening air. So they felt happy and snug to enter the big, warm, bright room. The little bunnies were also hungry from all of their playing outside in the fresh air. So they felt even happier when they saw a big soup pot sitting in the middle of the table. Steam was rising gently from the big pot, so they could tell something hot was inside, and a yummy smell was coming from it, so they could tell it was something hot and delicious. The little bunnies scurried off to the bathroom to wash their paws, and in next to no time, all 6 of them were back at the table, hopping up onto the benches, ready to eat. Grandmother Bunny stood at one end of the table, her reading glasses dangling on a long chain around her neck. She was a kind-looking bunny, just right for a grandmother, and she was very dear to her little grandchildren. Grandmother Bunny picked up a large spoon and began to serve soup. She scooped it into wooden bowls that Grandfather Bunny had carved from tree branches years ago. She filled up the bowls with steaming soup, packed with carrots and turnips and celery, and other things that little bunnies just love to eat. And she set a steaming bowl of soup in front of each of the little bunnies. Now that soup smelled delicious, and they couldn't wait to fill their bellies and warm themselves with it. But the little bunnies waited politely until all 10 members of the bunny family had bowls of soup in front of them. They waited until Grandmother Bunny put down the big spoon and sat at the table to enjoy her dinner too. And then they began to eat. And oh, did that soup taste good! It was sweet from the carrots, and salty from the celery, and nutty from the turnips, and they loved every bite. At first, the little bunnies and the grown-up bunnies ate in silence. But after a while, the little bunnies began to tell their parents and grandparents about their day. They told about the games they'd played and the funny joke the oldest squirrel brother had shared. They told about the falling leaves and the way the air felt colder tonight. "The weather is turning," Grandfather Bunny said, and all the grown-ups nodded in agreement. Grandmother Bunny said she would put an extra quilt on their beds tonight, so they would sleep as snug as could be, all night long. When they all finished their dinner, the little bunnies carried their bowls and spoons to the kitchen. The kitchen was another cozy room with a wooden counter running all around its sides. On the counter there was a large wash tub filled with water, a pretty jug painted with flowers, and a dish rack. The little bunnies took turns washing their bowls and spoons. First, they dipped them into the warm water in the wash tub and scrubbed them with a cloth. Then, they poured fresh water from the jug over their dishes to rinse them clean. Lastly, they set them neatly into the dish rack to dry. When the little bunnies were done washing their bowls and spoons, they went to the bathroom to brush their teeth and get ready for bed. And then, when at last they were all ready for the night, they went into their bedrooms. There were 2 small rooms next to one another. The 3 sister bunnies all slept in one of the bedrooms, and the 3 brother bunnies all slept in a matching bedroom just next door. The sister bunny's bedroom held 3 little beds next to one another, each covered in a pretty blue blanket with a pattern of tiny flowers. The brother bunny's bedroom also held 3 little beds next to one another, but these were covered with pretty green blankets with a pattern of tiny leaves. The bunnies felt tired from their long day playing outside. They felt wonderfully warm in the cozy den, and they felt perfectly satisfied from their delicious soup. And now they were beginning to feel sleepy, very sleepy indeed. So they each hopped up into their own little beds and snuggled down under the pretty blankets, yawning widely. In a moment, Grandmother Bunny bustled in, carrying a pile of quilts that she'd made herself last winter. She went back and forth between the 2 rooms and carefully laid a quilt over each little bunny, tucking them in so they would be cozy and snug all night long. Then She kissed each brother bunny on the tip of his nose and the tops of his ears. She kissed each sister bunny on the tip of her nose and the tops of her ears. "Good night," she whispered softly. Next, Grandfather Bunny came in. He kissed each brother bunny on the tip of his nose and the tops of his ears. He kissed each sister bunny on the tip of her nose and the tops of her ears. "Good night," he whispered. Then it was the parent bunny's turn. The parents came in together and kissed each brother bunny and each sister bunny on the tip of their nose and the tops of their ears. They tucked each bunny into bed once again, just to be absolutely sure they would be as cozy and snug as they could be all night long. And then they turned out the lights, and they whispered ever so softly, "Good night."